Hey, hey. We live. And today is all about portraits. We talking about portrait color mixing and just general portrait tips all together. Hey, Electra. What's going on, girl? So, what you're looking at is just a portrait that I did. It's a portrait of a tree frog. And just showing a few things so you can get a feel for my style of work. So I put like a lot of detail. Alano says, what's happening? Hey, Bree. What's up, y'all? Here's some more of my work. So you see, I know my way around a portrait. It's a lot that goes into some portrait work, but it's all possible. Just takes a few steps. That one could be a little better, but you know, online I can't really do much about it. Yeah, this also looks better. You can find these things on my website or on my IG. Sneaker Fair Kicks on IG. Appreciate all that love. Appreciate the love. Portraits are like my favorite thing to work with. Shanice's Pieces. Thank you. I love portraits. I like trying to recreate a person. Kind of helps me connect with that person in this kind of very interesting way. And then portraits have so much color in them. So, this is not mine. This is not mine. As you can see in this corner, you may have seen this guy on Twitter or on IG or something like that. The Twitter Picasso. So, I'm not here to make fun of his work because he intentionally draws these portraits bad. He doesn't really draw portraits, you know, to be an artist. He draws portraits for humor. So why I put these up is pretty much okay. So you know who he is. Okay, why I put this up is to talk about some people's frustrations with portraits, and so. A lot of times people's frustration with portraits come from them drawing what they think something should be rather than drawing something that actually is. And that is probably one of the biggest things in portraits that frustrates people is drawing what you think something should be versus what it is. And so that some people refer to that as a filter, a mental filter. And so a mental filter is defined as a perception that exists to basically to prevent us from overloading our brains. So basically our perceptions, even with imagery, are used so that we don't get confused when we look at certain things. Our minds make up assumptions and things to make thinking a lot easier of a process. So when you do this, this is happening in your everyday life. So a lot of times when people draw pictures, like in the case with this Cardi B picture, he's drawing Cardi B's eyes really close together because when he looks at Cardi B, that's what he sees in his head. And the same thing with like the shape of her head and all of those things. So this is really about what he believes something is versus him drawing what he sees. And the same thing with this one. You know, this is him. This is, you know, it's pretty, it looks like Chris Brown, but you can see like the neck is like longer than it needs to be. The head is like a weird shape. I mean, obviously with this Drake, he kind of looks like E.T. a little bit, but again, he's drawing things the way he sees them in his head, versus looking at actual pictures of these artists and then drawing them from what he sees. So, a lot of times people can look at a photograph, and although they see the photograph, their perceptions usually only involve like outlines. They don't involve like the subtle details, like the different tones of the skin, the different textures like hair, skin textures, lip textures. So your perceptions kind of they kind of take those away from you until you teach yourself how to see what is and not believe, you know, what you see. Not to believe your mind first. And one of the ways people do this is like they also perceive that the nose is like really close to the eyes. So like you can see in this picture, Drake's nose is right in the middle of his eyebrows when the nose starts below the eyebrows. And those perceptions usually make us have incorrect proportions when we draw. So one way to avoid doing that is to use a grid. So like you can see in this picture with the lady, hey Lucy. So in this picture with the lady here, is blocked off into squares. A lot of people's favorite measurement is use a 1 inch square because it's pretty much universal. So you can break up a picture into 1 inch squares all the way across and all the way down. And now, if you need to, like your canvas or your paper is bigger, then you double the size of the square. So, but what you want to do is you want to make sure that the measurements are double for the size that you go up. So you can use a simple math equation. So if your photo is like a 5x7 and you want to double the size, then your canvas or whatever you're going to create the portrait on should be 10x14. And you can do that so on and so forth, infinitely larger sizes. But you should keep it relative to the size of the original photo. Now, this here, the little like X shape, Y shape thing there, that's called a proportional divider. And with a proportional divider, as you can see, like in the picture, the smaller end is on the smaller portrait, where it's like on like the bottom of his mustache to the bottom of his chin. And you can see on the larger picture, it's doing the same thing. So you can see both sides of the proportional divider are on the lip, mustache area, and then the chin. So that tool, which you can buy in different sizes, they can be expensive, but they're invaluable because that's going to stop you from drawing things out of proportion. You can just line it up with both images on any portion of the body. You want to make sure the eyes are the right length, you can use that. You want to make sure the nose and the lips are in the right place, you can use that. So that's also another way to help you with your proportions and keep your portraits accurate. This is where we get into the meat and potatoes. So pretty much here we're talking about a tonal TONAL value scale. Tonal value scale. Now, why a tonal value scale is important is because if you can see a value scale in black and white, then you'll be able to train your eyes to see colors and the appropriate tints and shades. So if you've never worked on portraits before, the most important thing that I would recommend is that you start in a medium that you can work fast, and you start in a medium that if possible you can erase, so you can correct things when you don't really approve of what you see. So what I mean by that is pretty much with this tonal value scale, I would recommend trying to start on pencil or charcoal. Again, something that erases pretty easy and you can work really fast, because what you want to do is you want to be able to again get these tones in the right spaces and to have tones around them that will blend together and work well, because that's where you're going to get your 3D shapes. So like on this model's head, we can see like here in the back of the head, this should be the darkest area. So those tones come from this bottom half of this scale. And same here. Those tones come from down here. Same thing with under the nose, the top of the lip, under the lip. In portraits, the top lip is always the darker lip. And this is always the darkest too. Right under the eyebrow and like under here. With the exception of the eyes being open. Here too, where the head begins to you can see the side of the forehead and things like that. The middle of the brow is a darker area, but that's in more of the middle tones. Where the forehead is the roundest, especially considering your light source, is where you will see like these tones. And the roundest part is usually where you'll get the pure white or the mix of really light colors. Same thing here with the neck. So when you can do a tonal scale like this in a portrait, you can definitely work on going into colors. You'll have an easier time. The ball figure just shows these tones in a round form. So as you can see, the lightest tone is in the middle, right at the highlight, and then they just get darker and darker as you go back, except for here. This is where the light, as you see this little like light gray area, this is where the light bounces off the surface that this sphere is sitting on. So this ball is sitting on like a table or something like that. And the light hits the table and then bounces off the back of the ball. And that will create this lighter area and then this darker ring. So when light, the areas that light can't touch, that's where the shadow is created. And that's where you'll get the darkest tones in like a 3D shape. So the shadow will be where the light cannot touch because the light is blocked off by the physical object. And again, this here is just showing a value scale on a flat surface. So it's just showing you how subtle the tones will blend together. And this is something that's like really important if you're going for like a really realistic portrait. You're gonna want to be able to get those smooth transitions, that smooth gradation, to where you can almost not even tell where the color begins or ends. And that is what this is all about. Here is that same picture in color. Now, if you notice, the tones are different, but they can easily have been the same colors, just put in a grayscale in the first picture. So it takes some time to train your eyes to see it, but those grayscale colors from white all the way to black, those are the exact same colors as those. So they're in the same value. They're the exact same values. So that really, really light kind of yellowish color is that white at the top. This dark brown, it almost looks black, is dark brown. You can consider it more of a natural black. It's more brown than it is black. It's just this. It's this. It's the same thing. Not much different. It could be this one as well. So this here, what you'll notice is when you paint a portrait, very rarely will you see solid specks of white unless white would naturally show up in an area like that. So on the black and white one, this area was like really white, light gray. On a lifelike portrait, this would be a warm yellow flesh tone color, depending on the complexion of the person. So that's something that you want to pay attention to, is where those highlights go, and making sure that the highlights appear natural. Again, this is all assuming that you're going for realistic portraits. More artistic portraits don't necessarily have to follow these color rules. But as you can see here, as the colors go down, they get darker, but they become more red in value. So these here are, this is like a yellow. This is like yellow with like some fleshy pink in it. And then it just starts to get redder, redder, redder. Here, we're getting really red. It's brown, but it's red. Remember that that brown does have red in it. And then it gets really red here, and it's just like really dark brown, like a darkish red, brown, burgundy-ish kind of color, where you can see like in the cheeks, the lip, a little bit in there. You can see those. But it's the same tonal scale, just in color. And again, with the ball, the same thing, except for here, where this is a shadow, and that's just where the light does not touch. And in something realistic, that would be like brown, like a really dark brown that you could make. And you can make a natural black and just put some brown in it. Check out my other video on color theory for natural black. Let's move on. Here we go. Lips. So with lips are kind of special. I know some people have some issues with them, but again, when this video goes up, refer back to like the proportion section, and you'll get like some good information on lips. So with lips, we're gonna pay attention to the highlights and the shadows with lips. As you can see, there's a little bit of information in this one here. In this top picture, we're just talking about some of the types of colors that you can use. So this top color here is it's a red mixture. And this red mixture is just used to like warm up some areas. Like your lips are very warm in color. Even if you have darker lips, your lips are very warm in color, and when you paint them, you want to keep them warm to give the illusion of like a lifelike look. So when you paint or draw, whatever you're using, if you're using colors, you want to make sure that little area in the crease where it's like shadow light, that you're using a cooler color for that. You want to make sure that that's like a cooler color. Don't use black. Try to use something that's like maybe a darker red. Purples kind of work really good, but purple is more on the red side. Again, we want to keep it warm. So when you're doing like the bottom of the lip, be sure to add a highlight. Not all lips have highlights at the top, but the bottom usually does. You'll find highlights at the top if it's like a woman and she has lipstick, lip gloss, such and such. But for the most part, you will not find this on a male's lip unless the person is like wet or I don't know, maybe wearing lipstick too, but it's usually not a thing you see. And so these are just different angles for the lips, and where you can see that the shadows show up a little more in some of these areas, and it's just showing you that the shadow changes ever so slightly. And if you're working from a reference, you that information is already given to you. Just careful with your coloring. It's the same thing with ears. Like, our ears are very warm too, because a lot of blood flows through the ear. The ear is very thin as a part of your body, so it gets a lot of blood flow. You can really see it. Lips are definitely a challenge. RTA fam, that is definitely correct. So with the ears, where your ear is going to be like the most warm is like right at the, come on now, don't do that. Your ear is going to be like most warm in this area. So like you have a lot of brighter colors up here. And then they just see this arrow points to like a highlight. You may have that in your reference. If you go from reference, you may not. Again, this area is usually like a little these like your cool colors. I talked a lot about cool colors in my first live. That is definitely saved. Go and give that a look. Same thing, this is just a different angle. And you'll see here where this line goes here, the cool shadows. That's important. So a lot of times people are working with shadows and they're using black. Black looks very unnatural. You don't want to use black, especially like a black that you didn't make, a natural black. So focus on using cool colors for your shadows. Check out my color theory video again for tips on making natural blacks and cool shadow colors. This is about eyes, and I know eyes are a big one for some people. Eyes really bother people. So with eyes, the most important thing to me with eyes is the color of the whites of the eyes. That's never white. In a realistic portrait, you will never see this white. And that is because when you look at people's eyes, especially like in pictures and things like that, the eye is never white because, number one, it's shaded by the eyelid. So as you can see here, right at the top, and even in the corner, like it's like a shadow color. So that changes the color of your eye. Also, as you age, your eyes become less white. And so if you paint a portrait and you make the eyes really white, it'll appear unnatural because the brain does not see that color when it looks at people's eyes. That's only a generalization that we make in our own heads, but they're not white. And so it'll throw off your portrait, especially if it's pretty realistic. One of the other things too is here with the highlight. In this picture, it's pretty white for some reason, but I would recommend that you tone this down a bit. So this area right here, this is obviously like usually like black in most people's eyes. Or you can use a very dark gray around the highlight. That should be like a light gray, like a very light gray. You can put like a really tiny dot of white. I believe they put like a really tiny dot, like a real tiny dot, and there's like a lot of gray right here. So that'll give it the perception of depth. As that's pretty important. So we can go more into the color of an eye. And so with the colors of eyes, you want to make sure that these are like bright, because you want the person to have like a like life. So, you know, you want them to look lively, alive. Unless you're purposely intending the person to look a little dim, like to unless you're intending for the person not to look lifelike, which will take some careful color choice in the overall portrait. But if the person skin and expression is very lifelike, then you want to make sure that the colors in the eye is very lifelike. So you want to stay on the brighter side of your colors. And those are warm colors that you want to do that with. So if you can see here, all of these colors are on the warm scale of colors. This is a cooler, this is closer to the cooler side of browns, but as you can see, there's lots of red still in this brown. It's just a little darker. But that is going to help with making this look lifelike and really exciting. You know, eyes are very important for communication between humans. So that's one of the first things that people are going to look at in your portraits. Again, make sure you keep them bright. And here is a highlight in the eye. So usually there's one or two of these somewhere in the eye. You want to make sure that this is the brightest color that you have that's in that color family. So in that case, it's this this yellowish brown color. So this is yellow ochre. A lot of you have seen this color somewhere in the art store or in your own palettes. Yellow ochre is best for here. You can add a little white to it if you like to, if it's not bright enough, you can add just a little white to it. But this is very important. And it also helps the eye to look like wet, which is going to also aid you in having a lifelike eye. These are just some different samples for colors that can be chosen for different colored eyes. So like that, this is a like a hazel colored eye. And this is like dark brown eyes. Most of us, if you're like a person of color, you might have dark brown eyes like this. And as you can see here, the highlight is not so much. Darker brown eyes usually don't have like a really strong highlight. So you can see it's like real subtle. It's right here, but like really subtle. You can almost miss it. That's because the color of the eye is pretty dark. Here we go. Brighter eyed people. Okay, so the blue is very different from like the browner toned eyes. The thing with this is that you're going to have to use a bit of white when you create these, because blue eyes, especially if it's a realistic portrait, blue eyes are not really dark. They're not. So, you know, again, that's going to aid you in keeping a realistic portrait. You don't want like a super deep blue, like all through the eye, like this blue. You wouldn't want that because nobody has eyes this blue. 9 times out of 10, the eyes are like this blue or like this, like really icy blue, and then kind of like this. But to create the illusion of depth, we will need like colors like this. But we add white to them so that they're not too dark. So one of the other things too is that the highlight in the eye, the colored highlight, it's not going to be white. It's not. It's going to be some natural color. So in this one, it's like a yellow. It's like a yellow color. The iris has like a some natural color. Some people may even have brown. There may be a little speck of brown in there. But you have to pay attention again to your reference to see what color that highlight is. Just don't make the highlight in the iris a white highlight if it's a realistic portrait. Now in the pupil, that's different. The pupil is, you know, like a deep black, a dark gray. That can definitely have a white highlight, but I recommend the lighter tone around the white highlight area is like a really light blue. And you can tone it down with some gray so that it keeps harmony with the black and the pupil. And the same thing with the green. Green is green eyes usually have some brown in them. There's usually some brown somewhere in a green eye. So around the corners of here, you'll see like a little bit of browns. There's like little brown like streaks coming through it. There's a little brown around the pupil there. This here is like a really grayed out green. It's like a grayed out light green. And so this is what you'll want to use for that. This is yellow. And you can go with like a color Naples yellow. Naples yellow is closer to green. And then you put like just a little white in it. You can also mix that really, really pale yellow with a little green so that it blends a little more. And that gives you it gives you more of a natural look, which is again very important for a realistic portrait. And here's just like this is like a wet like mixing palette of what a person may use and how it would come out when they're ready to paint. So they would paint from this swatch here using these like mixes of different tones and stuff to get an eye like that. Same thing with the blue. And you can see like right here, it's like a weird funky color. It's really cool. It's like blue, but it's got those tones of yellow in it. And then it's like yellow with like tones of blue in there. And that's like this little edge around here. And again, our eyes have these like subtleties in them. And that's going to aid in that smooth transition that makes it lifelike. So we can go down here. This is like hazel. And you can see we're working with the same, it's the same idea for different colors. Same idea, just different colors. And we're playing around with all these mixes and we're coming up with this. We're making sure that highlight is usually somewhere in the corner. And it's got a little bit of gray on it. We're making sure the highlight in the iris is nice and bright. And it's got just lighter tones of the eye all around it. And again, we're making sure that the eye is warm. The eye is warm because the eye, like people say, they're the window to the soul. So unless the portrait is intended to be like dim and gloomy, you want to make sure that you're using bright colors in those eyes. So if the eye person has gray eyes, which is rare, but I mean, it's your portrait. You know, do how you do. Again, these colors are going to be warm. And as you can see in this eye right here, it is giving off like a red or like a brown tone to this gray. It's like a brown tone gray. This is a natural gray. Basically, natural in front of a color means that the color is usually hand mixed, and it's hand mixed from colors that naturally exist. So if you buy like gray paint, if you buy your blacks and white and things like that, 9 times out of 10 you are buying an unnatural color. It's man-made, unless you buy like a warm gray or a cool gray. But it's better just to mix them from your own palette. Mix them and you can make your colors. So as you can see here, like they put this brown, this like reddish brown. It's a darker red brown. And then they took this lighter gray, there's a little bit of black in there, and then you have the darker gray at the top, and then you have that really, really like pale yellow. And you can mix and match these interchangeably if you've got your value scale mastered pretty well, and you get this kind of an eye. So it's really warm versus like cold. And the cold eye, it just wouldn't look right if the skin is like really bright and the portrait suggests that the person is full of life. Then it just wouldn't work. So we want to make sure again that we're using warmer colors all across the board. And our warmer colors are our brighter colors, no matter what color we're using. Blue, your warm colors are your brighter blues. Green, your brighter greens. Brown is naturally a warm color because it's in the warm family of colors. And grays, mix your grays. And mix your grays with warmer colors, your warm browns, your really, really bright browns. This is hair. And so the thing with hair is really all about these three aspects. Shadows, the main color, which could also be considered the underlayer, the first layer, and the highlight. The highlight arguably is the most important part because this is the part that people probably struggle with the most. The shadows you can get because the shadows are always there. The main color is the first layer, so it's the flattest layer. It's pretty easy to figure out. Your highlights are what is going to separate whether or not it looks like hair or it just looks like something flat. So again, with your hair, that's largely going to depend on what that person's hair color is. And you can guess because hair colors, no matter what, like at the top we have a dark brown hair and we just have a brown hair. There are hundreds of dark brown variations. Same thing with just a regular brown. So many variations. Our hair is not the same no matter what. Hair is very challenging. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your tones are correct and you're getting the correct value out of your hair colors. So with dark brown, although dark, is usually warm. So your brown should have a lot of red in them and even some orange. You find orange more in your highlights like this. This is orange. So it seems strange because so you can look here and like this is like a brown, like a reddish brown, and this is orange. So that doesn't make sense, right? But then when you look here, this is orange. But right next to the brown, it's no different. It just looks like a different brown. It's no different next to the orange. And that's an illusion that we can play with colors. You can hear more about that in my color theory video from last week. But that's very important, is to use the colors to your advantage to create the illusions of depth and detail. So when you're doing this, again, you want to make sure that you're adding brighter colors to these highlights. And highlights are done last. And so it's the same thing with this brown. So we're going from this to this, and it's a little lighter, but the value changes are just a little different. So when you would go with this brown, you'll probably use like a little speck of white in each color, so that the highlights aren't necessarily like orange like this, and you'll focus more on keeping your colors in the brown zone rather than using like a brighter color to make sure that hair stands out and doesn't look flat. And here's another one. So this is golden brown. So like the difference is with like golden brown is that you're gonna use more yellows in the hair. So your combinations, your mixes will have more yellows in them. So like this is closer to yellow. And so you'll make a brown and you'll add yellow in it to get like kind of like, it's like a, I don't know, I would guess like a dark honey color. To me, it looks like raw sienna with a little yellow in it. So you'll go that route. And again, every color will have like a lighter yellow. So even this like shadow color, it's still pretty bright compared to like this one. It's like really dark because that's like burnt umber. but this is like burnt umber with sienna in it, burnt sienna and raw sienna. You can use either one, or you can use them both in combination. Doesn't hurt to use both. Light brown is not as warm of a color, but light brown is going to have more white in it. You're gonna use more white, and then you'll use like more yellow too. And you see here, this is like yellow. This is a red or brown for like the first layer, but it still has yellow in it, so that these two colors line up well. So typically between your main color and your highlight, they'll share a color so that they stay in the same family. The shadow should share a color in common with the main color and the highlight. All three should share a color, but it's not, at least in my experience, it's not critical that they do. It helps, but let's say you don't have the color or you can't get the mix correct, don't worry about it. All right. Now, this for some reason it's called auburn, but I mean, I'm not a hairstylist, so I'm assuming that has a lot to do with hair coloring rather than art. So auburn is just a dark red color for hair. So you're gonna stay on your dark brown side of colors, and you're gonna be using red in combination with those colors. So your shadow will be a dark brown with a little red in it. This has like a reddish tone to it. It's probably hard to see. This is burnt sienna with red in it, and this is yellow ochre with red in it. So it's kind of like a brown with like orange or red in it. It has that look to it. So you'll stay in that area when you're working with like a dark red hair. This red hair. Now, red hair, if you're going with a realistic red hair, please do not think of red like the actual color. We have to keep in mind that redheads actually have orange hair. It just doesn't sound right to call somebody an orange head, right? So it's actually a orange color. You know, think closer to carrots than you do anything else. So when you're doing that, the shadow color is going to be very bright. It's going to be very bright. Keep in mind, redheads have that bright, fiery look to their hair. You know, so you want to use like something like raw sienna, like a color that's in the middle when it comes to brown. And then you want to add like a little bit of red to it. You can try some orange, but you want to get into this range, you know. And again, that's going to be a made color, so it's going to be natural. This is a natural color because it's made. Again, in here, this is like the main color, so that's like this color right here and there. This is orange, but it has a bit of red in it, and it's like that red would be like a middle of the road red. It wouldn't be like super bright, and it's not dark at all. And for your highlights, that's orange. Again, you gotta keep and remember that it's gonna be orange, right? An orange head. That just sounds so weird, right? So your that highlight has to be orange. You want to keep some yellow, like Naples yellow is good. You put a little white in it too, so that it's muted. You don't want it to be like really powerful and stand out. Like a highlight should be a highlight, but it should smooth into the hair. So it should have like a smooth transition. So you put a little white in it to mute it a little bit. Strawberry blonde. How many people have heard of strawberry blonde as a color? Why is this not a redhead? It's the same thing. Strawberry blonde is like a really strange, it's like a strange color of hair. Strawberry blonde is like somebody who's you've probably seen more of this color than you have an actual redhead. Strawberry blonde is like the people with like the really really orange. It's like very orange, but it's like really light, and so for whatever reason they call it strawberry blonde instead of saying anything else. I guess it sounds cute in a fashion magazine maybe. I don't know, but this color is really heavy on light brown. So you can see here is raw sienna, and it's got a little yellow in it, and you may put a little red in there to just keep it dark. And the main color, again, this is like yellow, and you can put like a dot of red in it, or you can go from an orange, very similar to this. And this one is just gonna be this same color, this main color. So you take a little bit to the side and add some white to it. And this is golden blonde. So golden blonde, I haven't seen anybody that has this color hair naturally. But like a golden blonde is like, it's a little brighter than the strawberry blonde, but it's using almost the same color setup. So like look at this on the strawberry blonde, and then look at the colors here. So you're basically using this same idea, but you're adding white. You're adding a lot more white. And for the highlights, you're going to use yellow. And you may put like a dab of orange in it so that it blends in with the main color. And it doesn't transition so far away from these two. But it's really this, but brighter. This focuses more on yellow. Hence the name golden blonde. So even your browns are going to be like browns that are closer to yellow. And you can use like a really nice color wheel to help you see that. And here we go, pale blonde. Pale blonde, you've typically seen this color a little more in realistic settings for people's hair. Pale blonde focuses more on yellow and like a little brown, and you're going to be playing around with those. So this is more like raw sienna, pale yellow, and white. And you'll play with those combinations to get a color that you like. This is an orange made from raw sienna and white. Keep in mind that orange is in the brown family. Brown is actually just dark orange. Ash blonde, I'm not sure why this is called blonde at all. Again, this must be some fashion stuff, ash blonde. But this is more like brunette to me, on the ends of brunette. And these colors are basically browns that have like a little green in them, like an olive tone. So you're going to use browns that have olive tone, or you can add like a little green to your brown to get that olive color. The highlight would just be this color with specks of white added to it, or like a minty green with olive in it. And you'll get like these highlights. You can see here in the corners, it's got like that olive tone to it. Yeah, maybe dirty blonde, like those little colors like around the roots and stuff, maybe. So now we're getting to whites. And whites are not actually white. When you do hair on a person and the person has white hair, I beg you not to use white out of the bottle. It will not look natural. White out of the tube on a portrait does not look natural. It definitely should be mixed and have tones of brown and yellow, things like that. Otherwise, you'll make something that's like horribly unrealistic, assuming you're going for a realistic portrait. So with the shadows of a white hair on this side, This is warm white. So this is going to be like burnt umber. So burnt umber is like really dark, but you add white to it, and it'll give it a realistic look because burnt umber still has red in it, so it's full of color. The main color you would assume would be white, but it's not at all. The main color is gonna be burnt sienna, so like a reddish brown, and you add white to it until it gets close to a nude color, and then you'd go again and you'd add like more white, and you get this like really pale, like tannish almost color. And you can whiten either one of these colors until you get it to the color of your reference's hair. So I would recommend you keep your reference right next to your colors, and you mix and create swatches until they get to where you want them. But these are great starting points. So now cool white, I see cool white more in men's hair, and it's really good. I see it a lot in like African Americans' hair too. This I see more in a person's hair who is like blonde at some point in time in their life. They were blonde and then their hair started to turn white. You see like this like warm palish color, and this is usually like a color in somebody's hair that was really dark or even black. So this is just using cool colors. Now, the important thing with somebody having cool white hair is that you still should be using a warmer color in that mix, because again, we want it to look lifelike, and lifelike needs warm colors. So burnt umber is really important, and then they mix blue. Blue and brown just make grays. They make dark grays, but it makes a more realistic gray because you used a warm color, and it's like a neutral too. The white is the bottom here, the base layer, and then the highlight in a cool color white hair is just pure white. I encourage you to play around with those colors just to mix them up. But again, with the cool hair, just making sure that you use a brown that is closer to red than it is to blue. Let's see. Okay. There's another gray. So this is for our silver-haired people. Warmer grays. Again, this is using less white, but still keeping in mind that gray hair has life to it as well. So with that, you're going to make your grays from some browns. You're going to make your grays from browns. And you make your grays from browns, again, using blue and brown. And with this one, the shadow is going to be from like a dark brown, so burnt umber. The main color, you can use a bit of brown and a bit of red to get this like lively light color. This will help the color look, it'll help it look warm. But I will put a little blue in this, just a little. And here, this is just using mostly white and a little bit of burnt sienna to get like a nude, tannish color. So cool grays. Now, the reference here, I don't really agree with this ivory black, mainly because, again, I recommend that you create your blacks If you learn how to create your blacks, you'll make more harmony and make more natural colors, especially when you do portraits. Create your blacks. If you want a warm black, just use red and green, dark red and dark green. The darkest red and the darkest green you get, and mix those until you get a nice black. More on that in my color theory videos. But again, with this is mostly white and then black. This, which is the main color, the undertone of this is this is mostly white, but there's a speck of blue in there, and then there's a little bit of red, like it would almost be negligible, the amount of red that goes in there, and that keeps this this like slate gray, bluish gray, like live and full of color. And this one, the highlight is just white, but you put like a negligible amount of blue in it. You'd barely be able to tell, but in the finished picture you would know, because the white wouldn't be in harmony with the other colors in the hair. But this is the only color where there is not, the only color of hair where there is not going to be a large amount of warm colors to keep the life. Cool gray is an exception. Black. Okay. So contrary to popular belief, blacks in hair color are different. So a lot of times people use the same black for every example of hair. Well, my observation is that usually warm black, I see this a lot in more melanated brown skinned people, like a warmer black, African Americans in particular. The black is a warmer color. So again, this is a black that you make, and this black is going to be made from a dark brown and then the darkest blue. And so it makes a black, but it's so natural that in your picture you won't even notice that it's not black, as long as the balance is kept in the colors. And you're gonna focus more on your darker browns, but on the warmer side. Your highlight is just gonna have a little white in it. Oops, I bumped the camera again. So clumsy. So cool black. Cool black, this color, I see this a lot in people who live in like colder climates, or they live more on like the eastern side of the globe. People of more Eastern descent, like Asian, various types of Asian people, people in India, not so much people who are in like warmer climates. You usually see like a browner tone to the black instead of the blue. So the cool black is mostly blue and cool gray, which is grays that have a lot of blue in them. The black is not pure black. You will not use a pure black. Again, it is not natural, so it won't look as realistic. So black hair for cool black is black and the darkest blue you have. The suggestion throughout these examples is ultramarine blue. If you're not buying like pigments or paints that have the names on them, use the darkest blue you have, and you'll get there. So this color is this with a little white in it. So I like to correct this a little bit, is to say that you're gonna use more blue. This example is almost like, it's hard to see, I'm sure, on like your phone, computer, what have you, but it's blue, but like it could either be blue or black. It'll be hard to tell. It's one of those things that looks different in the light, which is how you want it to look with hair. And then the highlight is just this color with more white. Keep in mind that we still want to have a little bit of red in these colors. And that'll help it give that really realistic vibe by having like a little red. It's like not even enough red to even notice. Like barely touch the red and then mix it into this, and it'll keep it lively. So throughout the examples, you've heard me talk about keeping things warm. And I recommend that you practice with these before you even go that route. Just practice making these swatches. Practice making all types of swatches. You can get some references and different things, and you'll find them. There's a book you can get at Hobby Lobby. It's called Color Mixing Recipes. There are 2 different types. One of them's for portraits, and one of them's just for different colors. And you can find a lot of these examples, and they'll even give you like the recipe for it. Now, I'm not sure how much time I got left, but I'm gonna jump into like some just like some notes that I have. I'm gonna try to finish out my time like that. So, as a kid, most of the time, like when we draw things, like we really draw from like a cartoony frame of reference in our mind, and that usually just comes because our first impression for different things is skewed because we're children. We don't really have we haven't really developed our minds to really notice a lot of different things. So where that comes in with our portraits, like if I go back to the beginning, where that comes into play is that we do a lot of hard lines when you first start drawing portraits like this. Like you do a lot of hard lines like this, like Twitter Picasso here, our guy Twitter Picasso. All these hard lines. He's drawing from his child's mind, which is okay if that's his intention. But if you guys want to do realistic portraits and improve on your portrait work, maybe you don't want to go this route. So in a realistic portrait, like the examples that I created, you'll see there are not many hard edges in these drawings. And that's what keeps them realistic. A lot of times, these your work will probably be highlighted in white, so like the edges will have like a white look to them, like this one does. And it makes it soft. And it also gives it more of a 3D appeal. And in your portraits, what you should focus on is focus on shapes. As you can see here, there's a lot of detail, but it's mainly shapes. These are shapes. As I go further back, you can see more of a complete picture. But if you draw in shapes and you focus on the appearance of those shapes rather than what you're looking at. So and when you're drawing an eye and you think about a circle or you think about a ball rather than think about an eye, you will draw from how you believe a ball is to look. And again, like I was talking about earlier, the eye is not all white. You can see here, like it has like a little brown, little yellow, things like that. Same thing with this side. That gives it that realistic appeal. So again, drawing in shapes is more important. And to look at when you're doing like texture and things like that, look at those textures as patterns, not actual things. So like here, like his helmet is like a mesh and stuff like that. But you see like there's like dots and lines and different like blends in there, just lines and things like that. This is me thinking about the patterns that make up this space. So when you zoom in, this picture is like the size of like a regular sheet of paper. It's not big at all. But when you zoom back, you see a helmet. You don't see all of that. The same thing here. These are just patterns. Highlights in them because it's like a metal thing. It's black. But these are just patterns. So I'm looking at what color comes next. Is it a lighter gray, a darker gray? What comes next? Really close. I like to train my eyes to look in like the size of like a quarter. And I draw in like quarter size spaces all the way across. This picture took like over 24 hours total. One way you can do this is working on things. I say like I do it in the size of a quarter. That's just something I train my eye to do. Working like really small spaces, like a square. Like draw like a 1-inch square. Try to draw in 1-inch squares when you do portraits, or try to paint in 1-inch squares. That's how I started out, using a grid, painting in 1-inch squares. And now I can draw in like the size of like a dime or a quarter. And eventually you can get all these subtleties just by training your eye to draw in really small spaces. And my favorite thing to do when I'm drawing and I'm working on a technique is to start in the area that I may think is difficult. See, like here, like all these textures in the skin. I did this with watercolor pencils because watercolors allow you to get like so many layers. And you can get like hundreds and hundreds of layers in watercolor. And that helped me out with getting this frog skin, this texture, especially the textured paper already. And then because it's a watercolor pencil, I can draw right away. So in this eye, I like to start in the eyes first, because the eyes have tons of detail and I can focus like really intense on the eyes. And you can see like all the different layers. Who knows how many different color browns and oranges are in this eye? Who knows? Same thing with the green. I have no clue of what this frog's belly color is. It's like a mixture of brown and yellow. Probably even some other colors that I use. But I put like some like really, really like faint green in there because the highlights from his skin are bouncing off into his belly too. And you can see like highlights of blue in there too. But start off in a small space and start off with something that's like relative, something that you can relate to the most. And then you work outwards, and that helps you build up your confidence as you go through the portrait. Also, pay attention to your negative space in your pictures. Your negative space will help you concentrate a little more. So like this is negative space. There's nothing back here. It's a negative space because this is the subject, the frog. So everything else is negative space. Pay attention to that. That'll help you focus on the proper shapes and keeping the image like cohesive. One thing you can also do when you're painting your portraits or anything else you do, you paint, draw your portraits, anything else, you can also turn them upside down or to the side, things like this. If you turn them upside down Definitely upside down. You can do it to the side. It's up to you. But definitely upside down. What this allows you to do is to look at your picture in a way that won't allow your mind to make sense of the drawing. So I'll show you what I mean. Looking at this upside down, it's a frog. Yes, definitely a frog. But upside down, my brain isn't thinking about this picture as a frog. My brain is thinking about what's wrong with the picture. So when you're in the middle of a drawing, or you just finished a drawing, a painting, if you look at it upside down, you can see things that you may want to correct by flipping it in a way where your brain has to make sense of what it's looking at. In that way, you're tricking your mind to see things that you wouldn't see if it was flipped normally. So flipped normally, we would assume that this is a frog. It's a perfect frog. Nothing's wrong with it. Nothing's wrong. Again, flipping it over, if I hadn't finished this project, maybe I would say, I feel like there needs to be, one of the eyes might be too big. But the only reason I can see that is because I'm not telling myself, yep, looks like a frog. So I'm tricking myself into seeing the things that that are there that my eyes have gotten used to by taking it and putting it in an awkward position, which confuses my brain, and now my brain wants to make sense of what it's looking at. It's an easy trick. Now, one of the things too is, again, I talked about it earlier, is about not using hard lines in your pictures. As you can see, none of these lines are like hard. And the reason for that is because the closer the color is to value to the color next to it, there is less of a reason for a hard line. So like here, there's a natural hard line produced by the shadow in the frog's belly. Here and here, there is no hard line, because although this is darker in value than this area, there's a smooth transition of values. So there's no reason for a hard line right here. And when we look at realistic things, we don't see hard lines. That's because everything transitions really smooth. There is no really stark contrast in colors. And again, you can see very few hard lines in this picture. Even here, like the fold by his head and his back. We'll zoom in on that a little bit. Oh, that's a whole lot of bit. My bad. But like here, so this is just a darker blue. It's not black at all. It's a darker blue. And that aids in this transition. So you can see that this frog's skin has texture, but you can see it folds, which helps him look more 3D. There's no black in there whatsoever. It's just different blues, different dark blues. And that aids in a smooth transition, which makes it look more realistic. And if you have, if the shading's not so crisp, it's not so smooth, you'll see those hard lines, and that helps people to distinguish what's there and what's not. And the more they can distinguish between what's there and what's not, the less realistic it is, the more flat it will appear. So make sure that you're defining your shapes with values. You're defining your shapes with light colors, middle colors, really dark colors. Make sure you're doing that. So light greens, dark greens, light browns, dark browns, all the way down to like colors that are almost black, and right on the edge there is black. And so that keeps it a more realistic look. And at this point, I could pretty much just take any questions if it's any questions. I'm not sure how much time I have left, but I answer whatever questions you guys got with the time I got left. If we get cut off, send me a DM, and I can answer any questions there too. It's my favorite portrait right now. What is the name of the book at Hobby Lobby? It is Color Mixing Recipes for Portraits. And right next to it should be a book called Color Mixing Recipes for Acrylic, Oil, and Watercolors. So it'll be two books named Color Mixing Recipes. You'll see a lot of those references that I posted in that book, and more in-depth recipes, which is like hundreds of different variations of the colors I showed you. Thank you, Electra. That is my IG, Sneaker Fair Kicks. You are so welcome, Electra. I am here to help. I am here to help the RTA fam. So if you guys don't have any other questions, that is it for me. That is it. I have taught you everything I know. That's a lie. But I really, I get a pretty good rundown of for an intro course on portraits. Any questions? Going once, going twice. Thank you and good night, guys. Peace.